why were the jurors laughing when Diddy's lawyers were presenting his side of the case? Oh, it's very interesting. Let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like some cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. Also subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into it. It was well noted, or should I say well seen, by certain people who were actually in the courtroom at the time Mark Ignafalo was giving his closing arguments for the defense. And they said a bunch of the jurors were laughing while he was actually giving the closing arguments. But what I want to focus on, more importantly than that, is the ridiculousness of the case to begin with, if you will, right? So, you know, the defense had very good arguments. Basically, they were like, you know, call it as you see it. You know, the defense urged the jury, you know, in the final arguments, said concluding his arguments, Mark Ignafalo tells the jury, this is a serious case. Is this really the best the government can do? And meaning a racketeering case, or the charge of racketeering, is very serious, and questioning whether this was the best that the government can do. And when I say ridiculousness, I mean they charged basically one person with RICO. The person who they claimed that was Diddy's co-conspirator was not indicted, and Christina Karam. Very telling, versus Jane Daphne Joy, 50 Cent's baby mama, and Cassie, right, whom all had personal relationships with Sean P. Diddy Combs. You know, Ignafalo was very, I would say, brilliant in how he handled it. He says that the prosecution hasn't been clear about where the guns were kept, despite numerous mentions of guns in their testimony. This is a fact, right? Remember, when they did the news conference and indicting Diddy, they talked about these guns, these serial numbers and all of that, and tried to make it seem as if it was way more sinister or way more illegal than it actually was. None of the guns were illegal. None of the guns were stolen. So where does that fit in to this RICO situation, other than to say we have a little shiny object here? That's when I say little shiny object, you really can't tell what it is until you get close. And when you get close is when the actual trial is happening, when the actual facts are talked about, right? Ignafalo also said that there has been mention of DNA during the alleged arson of Kid Cudi's Porsche, as well as unexplained holes in the car, but no clear investigation into it. And as a matter of fact, the only DNA that they came back with was that of a female and not of a male. So once again, you can make inference to something, but you have to prove it with evidence, and not just inferring that, you know, well, who else could have did it, you know. And these are just some of the things that I thought that were very important from that perspective in talking about that. Ignafalo also questioned the trust that should be put into the prosecution's evidence, asking at what point do you stop trusting? You know, because that's what the prosecution was basically asking. They were like, you know, trust that what we're saying to you is the truth, and that, you know, this guy, Sean P. Diddy Combs, in particular, in reference to this case, not his whole entire life, but what the government was asserting or alleging, if you will, right? He also said that it takes a lot of courage to acquit, telling the jury, you are the United States of America. This is your courtroom. This is your house. Call it as you see it, Agnifilo told the jury. I think that's very important because a lot of times jurors feel compelled to be at the judge's behest, or at the, they kind of are scared if they don't do something, then, how it's going to look. But like I said, once again, Agnifilo did a great job, as well as, what's her name? The other prosecution, Tina Garagos, and also Alexandra Shapiro. They did great jobs. Brian Steele, who else? Westmoreland. All of them did great jobs, and everybody played their position. Agnifilo also concluded, I'm asking you to acquit Sean Combs of all the counts. He is not a racketeer. He sits here innocent. Return him to his family who has been waiting for him. Facts, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, once again, to have this one-man RICO situation, when the government sold us this case, the public meaning, when they sold us this case, it was something that they said, this required the help of his assistants, and it was this and it was that, and it was all of these other things. Like I said once before, like I said, the solo act of the defense argued basically the solo racketeering conspiracy charge. Mark Agnifilo also says Diddy has been indicted on a racketeering conspiracy charge alone. There's nobody else that's been indicted, ladies and gentlemen, like the government had told us, or told the public, or that was widely disseminated on the news. It just wasn't so. I mean, from that perspective. And so what we continued to do was wait and see whether other people would be included in the indictment. It never came to fruition. Basically, flagging that no alleged co-conspirators have been indicted alongside him. This is what Mr. Agnifilo was telling the jury. He says Diddy has been indicted on a racketeering conspiracy charge alone, flagging that no alleged co-conspirators have been indicted alongside him. He says rather than a co-conspirator, Diddy's ex-chief of staff, Christina Karam, was a much-loved team member, adding, everyone should have a KK. Absolutely, positively. Are you serious? I can't, like I said, you can't put enough emphasis on what he just said. And I was telling, in a couple of videos ago, I was talking about the same thing in regards to Christina Karam. Everybody needs somebody like that. She stood 10 toes down and 2 feet deep, And so when you understand that and what that is, a lot of people, as you've seen, even Daphne Joy, aka Jane, went in to testify for Diddy, and Diddy is still paying her rent. How about that? While he sits in the Metropolitan Detention Center, the Federal Metropolitan Detention Center in New York, right? So he basically said that everyone should have a KK, and says security man D-Rock would solve problems. Agnifilo describes both Karam and D-Rock as very, very nice. He says having sexual relations with his girlfriend in a hotel and doing drugs are his personal life, not a racketeering conspiracy. True, you can do what you want, you drink alcohol, whatever. That's your business. As he began to wrap up, Agnifilo again returns to his narrative of a fake trial, right? Urging the jury to listen to the real trial, right? I think that also, that fake trial thing also resonates to the White House, if you will, to Donald Trump. And like I said, and then if you look at, what the quote fake trial versus the real trial and what's really going on here. Once again, you can, if you have enough understanding, you should be able to discern what Ignophilo is talking about. And once again, this is another thing that I kind of thought about as the trial was going on. No one said, "Hi, I'm a male prostitute." The defense argues. Listen, photos of 27 male escorts were shown to juries yesterday. Just 2 male escorts gave evidence for the prosecution, both of whom testified they were not prostitutes. Ladies and gentlemen, did you hear that? Photos of 27 male escorts were shown to the juries in court yesterday, but just 2 male escorts gave evidence for the prosecution, both of whom testified that they were not prostitutes. Diddy's defense says his hiring of escorts should not be viewed as a sexual act, and that they were paid for their time and entertainment, right? Ignophilo says it would be a very different case if they said, "Hi, I'm a male prostitute." That is a fact. That is a fact. As a matter of fact, when Cassie first contacted, when she testified that she contacted, I believe it was Daniel Phillips, she talked about how she told him that it was a bridal shower party, if you will, of some sort. And when he got there, it was, she requested some other things that she explained to him, and they would do what they did from that perspective. But yeah, it was very, very interesting that Mark Ignophilo basically touched on that, which the prosecution chose to ignore. He also said it sounds like spring break, a different cast doubt on Jane's testimony, if you will. The jury is reminded of a night in June of 2024 when Jane and Diddy had a physical altercation, leaving Jane with a black eye and welts on her forehead. After a prolonged physical fight, Jane claimed Diddy coerced her into having a freak off at her home with a male escort called Anton, who she said she had previously run into in Las Vegas, which Ignophilo likened to a spring break. Ignophilo says a part of her story doesn't make sense, and tells the jury, "Guys, you are here because you have friends, kids, parents who have lived full lives, because you know how people work. You were chosen because you are good judges of people." He says they should trust themselves and use their own eyes and ears and determine whether Jane's words are true. Facts. Once again, we heard when Teeny Garagos was basically cross-examining her talking about her using leverage in the relationship against Diddy. When he was on a vacation with Young Miami, and she was like, basically get your ass off that island or whatever, from whatever island that they were on, if you will. And so very important that Mr. Ignophilo had touched on that. And also he also basically touched on the fact that says that Jane was comfortable in that group and fits in perfectly. Speaking about Jane, defense lawyer Mark Ignophilo says she likes to travel, but was irritated with Diddy as she didn't get post-able content during her trips with Diddy. Meaning, she was mad because when she went with him, she didn't get a chance to take pictures of him and her at these exotic locations and places like that. The tricky part about that is, well, in the beginning, she didn't want 50 Cent to know about her dating Diddy, and she also didn't want her girlfriend, who was actually dating Diddy before she was, to find out that she had began to date Diddy, if you will, right? And Ignafalo also said that Jane is a pseudonym to protect her identity. We have heard previously that she was jealous of trips and luxury items given by Diddy to some of his other girlfriends, in which Diddy was openly honest about from day one, ladies and gentlemen, right? Ignafalo also said, I think she loves Sean Combs. You guys know who her baby father was. You know who she was with in Vegas. You guys know, meaning she was in Vegas with Kanye West, right? And his girlfriend. And she also has a baby with 50 Cent. So, like I said, when he said Jane was comfortable in that group and fits in perfect. Why? The pretty girl using her pretty to woo Diddy, to woo 50, be in the presence of Kanye, who was telling her that he liked her, that, you know, he was interested in her too, and so on and so forth, right? And so, like I said, when you say, you know, when he says, who she was in Vegas with, because they didn't want us to know, the prosecution didn't want Kanye's name mentioned in the case, because they, I think, are working to try to get Kanye swooped up on the same thing, if you will. Ignafalo says of the freak-offs that she was comfortable being in that group. Remember, they were in Vegas witnessing some similar same thing with the guy Anton, if you will, right? That's just how she is. She just fits in perfect, right? Referring to a sobriety party, which was a hotel night in 2023. Ignafalo says bottom line is she agreed to it, and that it's all you need to know. Right. Nobody, you know, this force thing, and, you know, trying to create this, I like to call it revisionist testimony, right? When a person wants to revise their testimony now because it's now in court and being charged in court, if you will, right? Diddy's not the only man in America making homemade pornography, if you will. The difference now gets into what feels like a review of the freak-offs or Wild King nights. Mark Ignafalo says the hotel rooms are beautiful. The music is beautiful. What you see, if certainly something you are not going meant to see, right? You know what I mean? So basically, he's saying what you see, if certainly something you are not meant to see. He also said there is rapport between the people in the videos and notes. Everyone is smiling. He says people are eating food. Cassie is eating watermelon. And people are listening to music. This is not something where, you know, this grave thing that they were trying to get the jury and the public to believe was going on. Remember, when the indictment was first handed down, they were talking about something about Justin Bieber, Will Smith, and all of these other celebrities to make this seem more exciting than it actually was. None of that was true. None of it. Courtney Burgess, also hit with his lawyer Ariel Mitchell, are now currently being sued by Diddy for $50 million, ladies and gentlemen. $50 million for defamation, for saying that they had hard drives of videos with Diddy, so much so that they were subpoenaed in the federal indictment and came up with nothing, ladies and gentlemen. They were working these little news outlets and YouTube channels and all of that, saying that they had something. Remember, once again, the little shiny object. Come to find out, when their feet was held to the fire, they produced nothing, right? Ignafalo says two escorts who gave evidence during the trial testified that there was a lot of talking and hanging out. And they said they thought Cassie was really into them, commenting, I didn't think exotic dancers could be so naive. So even that, and this was a quote basically saying, I didn't think exotic dancers could be so naive. The point on exotic dancers and the way that Cassie had led them to believe that she liked them too, right? He says there is a nice quality to these evenings. Very standard, very typical, very homey, right? Not this thing that they were trying to describe. Making light of Diddy's hotel nights, Agnifilo adds, pretty popular thing nowadays. He's not the only man in America making homemade videos. And you got to understand another thing that he pointed out was basically that he said Cassie rose and fell on her own merits. The defense argued, right? The defense says it is incorrect to say that Cassie did not get the support other artists who were signed with Diddy got, and reminds the jury that Capricorn Clark says she got the lion's share of the production. So once again, when they were trying to basically point out the fact that Cassie wasn't getting the attention, her music career wasn't moving forward, it wasn't being promoted or anything like that, it's simply a lie. So on one end, when they wanted to believe Capricorn Clark, for things that they want, and this is the funny part about how life works. On one end, when they wanted to believe Capricorn Clark and what she was saying in regards to the things that they wanted to be against Diddy, right? You should believe it all. It should be believed. But then on the other end, when talking about her career and how she received the lion's share of the production, once again, the prosecution didn't really want to focus on that, because that's not what they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear things that basically favored their argument. Capricorn Clark also said she was a studio musician, right? So on one end, she talking favorably about Cassie, and then on the other end, she calling Cassie a studio musician and didn't have great natural talent of some of the other artists, right? So basically, Cassie was mediocre, and all of these other artists were top tier. Agnifilo also says that Cassie went to South Africa and put out a tape, adding, maybe it didn't make a lot of money, he says. I think she rose and fell on her own merits, right? And a lot of times when you deal with like her dealing with Diddy is another thing, because people will kind of discredit her, saying, oh yeah, that's Diddy's girlfriend, so she gonna get the marketing promotion that a normal or more talented artist wouldn't get. I think that's what Agnifilo was basically trying to say, adding that she doesn't think she has done anything meaningful since she left Bad Boy Records. Absolutely, that was her testimony. He also reminds the jury she was due to do a tour in New Zealand and Australia in 2022, but canceled it after she filed her civil lawsuit against Diddy and was rewarded $20 million, ladies and gentlemen. $20 million. So like I said, once again, very, very telling. I think when I think another thing that was interesting is when Mark Agnifilo, when he talked about in the beginning, he was like, oh my God, they got all of this, the baby oil and Astro guides off the streets. The streets are going to be safer now, being sarcastic. Another moment came when they basically, he was talking about what the jury, how the jury should see this. And he asked the question, he said, you got to ask yourself, you got to ask them, why did they charge the trafficking situation? That wasn't traffic. Why did they charge the kidnap situation? And during the break, one of the prosecutors basically said she objected to what he said in regards to that. And Mr. Agnifilo and along with Alexandra Shapiro was basically saying, hey, but yesterday they said that it was one of the things that they had made references to involving the guns, and that there could have been guns in the actual hotel room, which the evidence, they presented no evidence to that fact, right? So it basically was a lie. So they were trying to assert different or trying to paint different pictures and get the jury to believe that during the situations at the hotels that there were guns there, so people felt pressure, people felt coerced, right? Trying to force the jury and the public to believe that there was some kind of, he got a gun over there on the stand, you got to do what he say do. It simply wasn't proven. And what Alexandra Shapiro was saying, hold on, they did that yesterday and nothing was said, and we didn't say anything. The key is the prosecution, Maureen Comey, made an objection. You always have to have an objection on record. And so the judge basically said to the jury when they came back out after break, he said, what was said earlier in regards to that, please disregard that and move on. I thought that Mr. Gnafalo took that rather well and then proceeded to lay his case out. And I think he did a real good job, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to see now, after this situation and the case has gone to the jury, we got to see how they deliberate. But like I said, once again, it was a lot of sneaky things done by the prosecution that the defense really wasn't worried about. Like I said, more importantly, just basically focusing on the facts. Capricorn Clark the situation with the kidnapping. Capricorn Clark talking about, then she wanted to come back and work for Diddy. The situation with Jane, how Cassie was the only real big winner, if you will, based on the fact that she got $20 million. Diddy sitting in jail, for whatever it was. And I think the main reason for that was that Cassie knew a lot about the situation involving them, and I think Diddy kind of froze up. They put out the video too and all of those things, but you can see now why the video was put out. The video was put out to taint the jury of public opinion. I think the video was played at least 7 times in court, if not more. I would say around 7 times. Gnafalo also pointed out that the word love in these relationships between Jane, aka Daphne Joy, and Cassie, as well as Mia, and the Mia situation, it just didn't bode well. Like I said, if you knew about the Mia situation, about how she had some discrepancies about overtime and things like that, she sued Diddy. He paid her $400,000. The lawyer got $200,000. She got $200,000, and so that really didn't work out. She said nothing about anything happening during that time. She was doing that, but only would come out and make these claims and accusations after she obtained a civil lawyer, if you will. Like I said, all of it basically was consensual, they were saying. And so, like I said, we're going to see what happens. But I think it's very interesting that during this testimony, or should I say during these the defense's closing arguments, that the jurors were laughing, and they found it to be very interesting, if you will. And so, like I said, we're going to see what happens, ladies and gentlemen, with this situation. And for the most part, what do you think? Tell me, what do you guys think down in the comments, like I said. And
they said Tupac was untouchable, but behind the walls of Rikers Island, he was just a man, wounded, watching his back, and wondering who he could trust. He survived bullets, betrayal, and isolation behind bars. But what happened inside those walls has never been told until now. In the darkest corner of Rikers, he found betrayal and a brotherhood no one saw coming. These dudes smiled in my face, then flipped and tried to kill me, and I never saw it coming. They were Puff's security, Biggie's muscle, Henchman's people, and Tupac knew exactly who sent them. This is the side of Tupac Shakur the world never got to see, told by the man who lived it with him, not in the studio, but in a 6x9 cell. The rap battles, sex and drama with female guards, the tears, the silence after Jada Pinkett's visit, and the moment Tupac almost broke. Before Death Row, before All Eyes on Me, before Machiavelli, there was Rikers. Behind the Walls with Tupac Shakur, available now on Amazon. Get your copy. Learn the truth.
Tell me what you guys think down in the comments. Like I say, it's very much appreciated. And we're going to see Monday. We're going to see how long it takes. Me personally, I don't think that 12 jurors could come to a decision in regards to this case. You're going to have people feeling a certain kind of way about it. But that's just what I think. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Leave your comments. Very much appreciated. Your boy DELRAY, straight gang.